America's workforce. Its strength is our nation's success. Join Ronnie Spellman on iBuild America podcast as we explore innovative solutions and inspiring stories from leaders and workers shaping America. Discover actionable insights to build a motivated workforce.
Thank you for joining us on iBuild America. We are excited to present a wonderful, fabulous guest that is an expert and a leader in education and workforce development, Dr. Lee-Pruitt.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You are the president of Jarvis Christian University in Texas.
Yes.
Now, I visited your campus, 400 acres, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful campus on the eastern part of Texas and the northeastern part of Texas. And so I'm excited to have you here just to talk about the program. I was so stunned and amazed on the tour that you provided, and your expertise and career and what you've done is just incredible. So I'd love to have you tell us more about the campus and the university and then your journey to get there. And then we can talk more about workforce development and your role in that process.
Sure, I'll be glad to. Thank you for inviting me. I'm always excited about talking about Jarvis because Jarvis is one of those institutions that's kind of hidden away.
It is.
You have to be going to Jarvis to come to Jarvis, is what I say. You have to be intentional. Right. But Jarvis has been around since 1912.
Wow.
Originally founded by 3 women. Who were members of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ,
right?
2 African-American women, and 1 white woman who was married to a colonial, a colonel, a Confederate colonel, who was named Jarvis.
Okay.
And these 2 Black women wanted to establish a school for young Black children in East Texas. They had a conversation with Ida Van Zant Jarvis, who went home and had a conversation with her husband, and he deeded the land for Jarvis Christian University. And of course, as most institutions of higher learning started as an elementary school, then a junior high school, and now we're a university. And so university there, as you've seen, behind a white picket fence. We have about 13 majors, liberal arts institution, designated as a historically Black university, of course. And so we're there doing what most liberal arts institutions do, helping students to be lifelong learners. However, we realize that higher education has changed a lot.
Right.
And so our vision is to try to turn that big ship in the direction that it needs to go.
And so in what ways has the university system changed and college education has changed for you? What have you seen? So real quick, though, before you answer that, tell me about your journey to become an administrator and your career in education. I think it's so important for people to learn how you ended up in Texas because you're not from here,
right,
and how you ended up in Texas and how you ended up in this role.
Sure. Well, I initially was a clinical social worker in Mississippi.
Okay.
I worked with a psychiatrist. So my background is clinical social work. But I began teaching at Mississippi Valley State University in Itta Bena, Mississippi. Most people knew it for Jerry Rice, football.
Okay, yeah.
And the president at Mississippi Valley at that time was Dr. Lester C. Newman, who left Mississippi Valley and came to Jarvis. And when he came to Jarvis, usually what happens in higher education, if you know people who can help make your vision a reality, you invite them to come.
Absolutely.
And I came. For 12 years, I was provost and vice president for academic affairs. And when Dr. Newman retired in 23, the board elevated me to president.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Yeah. And so what are you seeing in education? What's changing? What's the landscape look like today?
Well, it's very difficult. It's changed a lot. It's very concerning. Almost every day we're hearing of especially small private institutions closing because of challenges associated with financing.
Okay.
You may or may not have heard of, some of your listeners or viewers may have heard of the demographic cliff that is happening in higher education, where college-age students are deciding not to go to college.
Okay.
There's always a question about what do you get when you go to college, right? The affordability, do you get a job when you finish, or you just a thinker? How does this work? And so we have all of those challenges.
Yes.
But in addition to that, now is also the whole career. When I spent 4 years in college, what do I do after that?
Right.
And so our focus now has to pivot along with that liberal arts education, especially for small private institutions, is how do we help our students get jobs afterwards? And so I say, Mr. Spellman, that we're going to have to run a parallel experience for our students where they can get that credentialing for their degree, but they also have to be prepared to go to work. And I think it's important that we do that.
And I've served on a couple of university advisory boards. And when I came out to visit you, I was just intrigued and impressed by your vision for just that. I think so many institutions are only focused on the academic piece, just creating which isn't necessarily bad, but creating a vision and an opportunity for students to really explore ideas. But you decided that that's still a core part of the university. But you do, in fact, need to get people ready for a job in some form of capacity, that you owe it to your students. And I was intrigued and compelled by your passion on that workforce piece. And I think legislators through the years have been trying to push universities, some of the bigger, more well-named universities, to focus on that element, maybe to some resistance. But you've embraced it. You've embraced it, and you're trying to partner. I had someone on the program that spoke about building partnerships with business and K through 12 and colleges. But that's something that you embrace.
The whole workforce higher education ecosystem is very large.
Yes.
You can't survive by yourself.
Right.
I think it's always important as leaders in higher education to see the direction that the country is going and the direction that the world is going in. And what we hear now is career readiness. And because we've worked with so many corporations, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, where our students do internships, the very thing that they say to us is that we don't really care what their major is. We want you all to help us make sure that they're ready to work with people.
Okay.
And we could teach them how to do the job, but we can't teach them about team playing, and we can't teach them about communication.
That is interesting.
We can't teach them about people skills. And so you're sitting there, and I was a provost at the time going, well, we need to really begin to focus on, if you have an English degree, that doesn't necessarily limit you from working in some of these big corporations, because there's a place for you.
You don't have to become
You don't have to be in accounting, right? You don't have to become an English teacher, right? Because these organizations are looking for young people and people to come who know how to work with people, who know how to follow instructions, who have great critical thinking skills, because they were saying to us, we can teach them what we do.
That is really
but send them ready to work.
So what's interesting, you mentioned internships as well. And then you mentioned getting ready. I've been working on this for decades as a volunteer for certain organizations where we always talk about those soft skills. So when I was in college, my university did a great job of preparing engineers, giving them the technical skills. What they didn't do so well at was preparing them to work in groups and on teams. And so those soft skills, how to communicate well. And I think today kids are so used to texting in acronyms and maybe 10 characters at best.
Yeah,
right. So
absolutely.
How do you get them to functionally have the ability to dialogue and communicate and work on teams? And then that critical thinking piece. How do you get them to think beyond what's in front of them for an Ernst & Young and some of these companies to help them solve business solutions? So it sounds like you've been headed in that direction with your programs.
One thing we did, we were part of a few years ago, the United Negro College Fund, UNCF.
Yes.
I had what they call a Career Pathway Initiative, CPI.
Right.
But they gave X number of dollars to certain institutions who applied and who, jumped the hoops and got the money. That really gave us an opportunity to establish an entity within Jarvis that we call the Employer Advisory Committee.
Okay.
These are persons from those big corporations that advise us on what industry is looking for.
Interesting.
But not only do they do that, they actually come to campus and sit with our students.
Wow.
Or they send young professionals who are more around their age to help them prepare. Look, this is what happens when you come in. This is what happened to me. I didn't think I was ready. And so when you have that kind of hand-on with your students, especially with students, because at Jarvis Christian University, most of our students come from Dallas and Houston.
Okay.
And they're coming to get away from the city.
Right.
And they want and need that rural environment. And or they've been to other institutions that didn't do so well because they were so large and they need that personal touch. And so when those students have an opportunity to interact with people who look like them, who are at these big corporations, and who can say to them, we know you're texting, we know how you communicate, but actually when you're prepared to come into the real world of work, this is what you have to do. Right. And so I think one of our biggest assets is having those relationships with those corporations.
Okay. That's amazing. So I presume you've laid out a new strategy under your leadership as you begin to look forward. What does that look like? You have the skills, soft skills development piece. You have your internships. I'd love to learn more about your internships, but what's kind of the foundation? And then you mentioned a lot of smaller colleges, universities going out of business for the finances piece. But walk me through kind of your strategy at this point. Partly because I'm fascinated about how you build that next future and continue providing this quality education, and the training side that you mentioned, getting students ready for the work world.
Well, I think being a social worker,
yes,
all of my degrees are in social work. I've always understood, I think, to a different degree than some others may be,
right,
the relevance of young people being diverse.
Okay.
I've also, and one thing when I became president, one of the first things, Job Corps.
Yes.
I said, we need to partner with Job Corps. And of course, people have this image about Job Corps. Job Corps is where the bad kids go, right? But I knew better, right? Because I understood that they were giving these young people, first of all, opportunities.
Right.
Second of all, they were giving them skills, real life skills that they can use. And third of all, they were just giving them, for some of them, you could stop off here on your way there, right? And so I knew that it would be important for us to partner with an entity. Their expertise, right, is skill development for jobs.
Absolutely.
That is not what we do in liberal arts institutions.
Right.
You're a thinker. You're reading philosophy. You're prepared to go to these professional careers, right? But that's not, so job skills is not our expertise. We can't develop that.
Right.
Faculty would look at me like I had lost my mind. And so that's why I knew it was important for us to partner with an entity, if at all possible, that would allow our students not just leave with that piece of paper in the hand, but also leave with a skill. And it's kind of a combination, I guess, of Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois.
Tell me more.
When you think about, those who are thinkers, those who have the college education, so often, especially at historically Black colleges and universities, we want people to understand that we are developing thinkers.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful thing, and we're going to continue to do that. But we want to develop thinkers who can work when there's some shifts in society that demand some other things, right?
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't stop you from thinking.
Right.
And so we want to make sure you have something in you. As a matter of fact, Jarvis Christian University historical motto is developing the head, the heart, and the hand. Okay. And so we want to develop the head and the hand.
That is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, in those early days, what do you think they produced people to do? I don't know if there was an agricultural component or not.
Jarvis was a work school.
Okay.
So back in the day when it first started, there were, they had farms and animals and people worked in cafeterias. So they had to work. And there is still a bell that you may not have seen when you came on campus that when that bell was rung, it's time for classes to end and it's time to work. And you either do that early in the morning or in the evening. And so that's why when you hear head, heart, and hand, you understand it's not only dealing with the thinking and the physical, but also the spiritual self, whatever that spiritual self is. Jarvis Christian University, wants to address all that because we're very clear you need them all.
That is amazing. So your history is steep in that workforce development jobs piece.
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't called that, right?
Right.
It was like I didn't have the money to get to college, but when I got here, Jarvis gave me a job to pay off my tuition. Back when you can do that, when you could afford to do that, right?
I think it's very intriguing and insightful and great foresight for you to recognize the Job Corps program. A lot of people don't recognize what it does and what it provides, but there are roughly 120 Job Corps facilities across the country. It's federally paid for, and young people between the ages of 16 to 24 can go to those facilities, and they're like small community colleges. Mm-hmm. They can learn a skill, a trade. And those trades vary from HVAC to sheet metal repair to culinary, completely free. It's a residential program. So they live on campus. They attend school on campus. They might volunteer or do some other items, but their internships are generally on campus. And then they have some other extra internships that are off campus. Incredible program, completely free for those that qualify for the program, and most people don't get it. So for you to build a synergy with that program, the trade kind of ideas is very, very thoughtful. I'm not sure that any university has picked up on that opportunity.
Well, it's been very interesting as Jarvis being a part of the UNCF cohort. There are only 37 private HBCUs in the country.
37, wow.
But there are only 101 HBCUs in the country total.
Right.
But as we're talking as presidents and I begin to share a tidbit of what we're doing, people are fascinated. Never thought of that.
Yes.
I know. That was my thought, right? But I think it's something that HBCUs need to really consider.
Right.
And I'm especially excited as we talked about, I think before we got started, about the reciprocity opportunities.
Yes.
So often we have young people who come to our campus. They want to do well,
right,
but they're not prepared for college work. Right. And as a president, when they sit in my office and I have to say, you have to go home, son or daughter, and they're crying because they don't really have anywhere to go, this gives me an opportunity. If they meet the criteria 16 to 24, right, I could pick up the phone and call whoever the person is. I think it's in Longview for our area. And say, look, I have a young person who's ready. They're ready to go now.
Wow.
What a difference that will make in that young person's life. And then when they get ready to come back, mature some.
They're doing at the Job Corps facilities. They have a number of wraparound services, including mental health. And they have a job placement aspect to their program. And so you're right. So I mentioned this to you before we began recording. When I was in your office and with you the last time, and you were talking about your students, and you mentioned exactly what you just stated, but you also mentioned that there was a specific student that you had to go to them and tell them that academically you're not succeeding here. Now might not be the right time for you to attend college, but here's a potential other option for you. And what struck me is that at your level as president of this university, your love and commitment to these students goes beyond them being enrolled and finishing their career there. You want them to succeed as a person. And I loved it. I loved hearing your passion for wanting to help anyone that you come into contact with find an opportunity in life, whether it's college or work or a similar program.
And I think that's the beauty of being a small, private institution, if that is what you do, right?
Right.
But people, they're what I do, right? They're what I enjoy. I enjoy being. I in the cafeteria with the young people every day, and so for me, I want you to stay at Jarvis and get a degree.
Yes,
right, because our graduation retention rate is based upon you doing that.
Right.
But for me, and this is probably rare to say, but for me, I'm not so worried about our retention rate. I'm more worried about your maturation rate.
Correct.
And your success rate as a student. And so I'd much rather see you leave and you may come back. You'll come back outside the retention cohort, okay. But if you leave and you are able to get your trade and you're able to be successful and one day mature to the point where you say, I'm ready to go back to Jarvis,
right,
and get a degree, then we'll be there waiting for you. But I don't want to see you fail, because failure at the age that we have these young people, sometimes they don't rebound.
Right.
They don't rebound.
And it is. I think finding those young people that might be either a little lost in their journey, or they might not feel like they have the support to complete their journey. Finding them and giving them that opportunity or that coaching and that insight. Sometimes that's all they need, just a little inspiration to know that they can make it, they can find their way. And so that is really exciting for me. What other trends are you seeing in the higher ed space from just an education, but also a workforce development piece?
Well, we're finding that a lot of institutions are looking toward career readiness.
Okay.
We're accredited by the Southern Association of Schools Commission on Colleges, SAC, COC. A lot of people know about that. And every 5 years, you have to do every 10 years you have to do a quality enhancement plan. As a matter of fact, I just got back last night. I'm an evaluator for SACS.
Okay.
And I just got back from a university whose QEP was career readiness.
Okay.
Right? Jarvis, we received our 10-year affirmation last year. Our QEP is career readiness. And so I think what we're going to begin to see is someone says that the ship of higher education turns so slowly. But I don't think we're going to be able to afford to turn too slowly. And so what we're going to see is that there are going to be institutions that are going to have to begin to say, when you get this English degree, this is what you can do with it. Right? When you get this history degree, and those are the liberal arts, right? And most of our institutes have those professional degrees, accounting and marketing. But for those students who come in who are in those liberal arts areas, I think institutions are beginning to say, well, what can we help them understand they can do with a degree? And I think that's going to make a difference. And that's where we're going to be if we're going to survive.
Now, the speed of change at a university, I'd love to ask you about that piece, to be able to adjust to trends in the marketplace or workforce development changes or whatever is affecting our economy and our system here in the U.S. Is it in the business side, a publicly traded company sometimes has greater challenges in pivoting quicker than, let's say, a private company, the reporting and some of the obligations. Do you find that being a private university allows you to make some changes quicker? I suspect that it does, but what do you see?
It does. Yeah. Being a private institution, you can pivot a lot quicker, I think. Now, you don't always have the resources that the larger institutions are able to do that, but you take lemon and make lemonade, right? So you're able to pivot. And it's especially the case with Jarvis kind of being obscure, kind of over, not a Spelman or those other institutions that we know. You can really take some chances. You can really think outside of the box and say, let's try this. And if it doesn't work, who's going to know?
No loss. I love it.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to tell me maybe about some of those ideas. And, that's the neat thing from a business perspective. I was working on a project recently and trying to coordinate with a governmental institution. And what they advised to me, I was trying to work with a government institution partnering with a college. And this leader in the government said, Ronnie, the organization, institution, academic institution you're looking to work with, they can't change that fast. But here's this other also government institution that has greater flexibility based on how they're chartered. And you need to go talk to them. The value and benefit opportunity in working with a Jarvis for business might be just that. So you mentioned some of the large companies that are working with you. But let's say there's some other companies here in Texas or across the country, they can come to you and you can build a program around them without taking 5 years to do it.
That's right. That's right. And still stand within the requirement for our reaffirmation with our accrediting body. But because you just have a little more flexibility, and because there are so many large institutions that, to be perfectly honest, are so far advanced than you, right? So you have an opportunity to work from the ground up and do some innovative things if that's what you want to do.
Right. So without giving away too much of what's on the horizon that you can't disclose yet, what's next in this student career readiness format and strategy that you're building? Like what's kind of your vision? What is your staff taking away from your plan that they're now going about executing it? More companies to work with, more internships. What kinds of programs are you facilitating something new and different that might be worth helping other leaders around the country? So the cool thing is there are a number of other private institutions that might be listening to this at some point, and they're looking for someone who understands them because they can't go to some of the bigger institutions and get from them what works for their university. But what tips and insight can you give on what you're doing from the college readiness and your strategy and pivoting?
Well, I think it's important to bring people in from the ground up.
Okay.
With me being a new president, right now it's a honeymoon. So, that's a wonderful idea, Dr. Pruitt, right? And so I'm able now to bring those things to the table. Because I was provost and faculty know me, that relationship is important.
True.
But I think another thing is having a constant conversation through professional development with all of your employees.
Okay.
about what trends, what's happening, what's going on in the real world, right? And how, if we want our student to be, and every professor wants their student to be successful. Every professor wants to hear that their students are stellar, right? And so if we're going to do that, then we have to provide opportunities now.
Okay.
For them to do that. So along with what we're doing with workforce, career development, making sure soft skills, we're also looking at making sure they have experiences on campus. One thing, interestingly enough, because what I'm saying to my CFO,
right.
You have business majors. Why would we hire someone when you could take one of our business students and they could be learning while they're in class what they're talking about in class? And so actually my CFO has done that. We have a couple of students who are accounting majors who are now working in the business office, right? And those are the opportunities that we have to give them. So along with Job Corps, we're excited about those opportunities, but we're also embarking above apprenticeships.
Okay.
And we're very excited about that. We have I don't know if I shared with you, but we have a teaching site here in Dallas.
Oh.
We have a teaching site here in Dallas. We have an off-campus instructional site here in Dallas. Been here 2 or 3 years, and we're beginning to establish some programs in technology in that site here on campus. But another thing that I'm really excited about is that we're also preparing to provide opportunities for young people who've aged out of foster care.
Oh, interesting.
And so we will be looking for some of our first students in the fall.
Please tell me about that program. That is so I worked at a healthcare company, behavioral healthcare company, and we had foster care programs and residential treatment programs. But trying to do something specific to that audience is really novel to me.
So what we're doing is we know that oftentimes when young people age out of foster care, they don't have a home to go to.
Right.
They don't have any more support systems. And a lot of them are languishing in society. And so here we go to social worker again, right?
Makes sense.
And so what we've done is we've established relationships with Department of Human Services in our county. And we've said to them, we want those young people who want to go to college to come to Jarvis. We are intentional about them coming to Jarvis.
Right.
We want to help them become acclimated to being independent, but we want them to have a piece of paper in their hand when they leave.
That's fantastic.
That really helps to ensure that they can do well when they leave.
It's a great idea.
And the fortunate and the interesting thing about it, as I was talking with faculty and they were and sharing with them what we were doing, a faculty member actually came up to me. She said, I was a foster child.
Oh, wow.
And I want to work with this endeavor. And so what we're finding is that, you don't know everybody's story. But we're very excited about that coming along, as well as we're working with Job Corps, Department of Human Services. And really Jarvis will look very differently.
That is
amazing. And Jarvis will be known as a very different, I think, university when people begin to hear the work that we're doing.
So I want you to tell me this, how companies can partner with you, but let me preface it by saying this, because your discussion on the CFO program reminded me of it. In years past, and several universities have it, I don't know if they execute it well, but an idea. I've gone to the undergraduate side of the university where they have a good marketing program, and they've allowed us to give them a partnership that allows their students to work on our marketing program. Now, I know that schools have the capstone program and some other projects, but I remember this program was 20 or so years ago, but they took on our project. They built out a marketing plan for us. They helped us do some design. And you're right, it's an incredible design. They didn't come to our facility. They did it from essentially the classroom on campus, but we were able to work with them really well. But the premise was very similar to you having your accounting students embedded in your own internal CFO program. And without having to hire someone. It kept me from having to build up a marketing department. We had a specific need at that point where we needed to ramp up our marketing, but I didn't think it was sustainable long term. So we went to this group and they were fantastic.
And, and not only that, but you're thinking, if our students are not good enough, prepared enough to work for us,
right?
What makes us think they're prepared to leave and go
Absolutely. And you know, the other thing that I think was beneficial for us at that point is we had fresh ideas being contributed from a younger audience.
That's right.
And we didn't just do the same thing that our marketing team would have done for decades and years, but we had a slightly different approach. And we approved or vetoed whatever it was, so we gave our guidance. But the energy that they brought and the different look on our business was amazing. So I don't know if you have anything like that, but I would tell you that build something like that, even an accounting program that other businesses can use to augment their accounting teams, might be hugely beneficial.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that between companies and universities, it's a great way to build up a workforce. Internships I absolutely love. Coming out of high school, I was a little unique. I had an engineering scholarship that allowed me to work as an engineer. So I graduated from high school, worked as a full engineer at a global company, hadn't spent a day in college.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was amazing. And I think about it now, and I wonder what inspired them to give this 18-year-old this experience. I think they just didn't know that we were supposed to make coffee and get copies. But I learned so much. So when I entered college a few months later in August, I felt like I really understood what an engineer was supposed to be and do, especially compared to my peers. So those internships are so critical.
They are critical.
But they need to be, I think they need to be beneficial versus just showing up because, a company signed an intern agreement and the interns are just following someone around. So it sounds like you're doing a really good job at building that out.
We're working on it.
So Jarvis Christian University, what's next on the horizon for you? Like what, you selling the position, you have your honeymoon period?
Yeah, I'm still in the honeymoon, even though I don't always feel that way. But still in the honeymoon period, coming up on my end of my second year, July 1st. And just continuing to try to make sure that we stay on the cutting edge of what's going on.
Okay.
Making sure our faculty are prepared for changes,
right.
To ensure that our students are prepared for what is going on in the world, making sure everyone understands that everyone on this campus, from facilities to the president's office, we're educators.
Yes. And
there's no one who's greater than the other.
Right.
We're all here for one thing, to educate our students.
And I'll end on this piece, but your land is amazing. What you mentioned earlier is that they had farming on the property in the early days. You have a huge wooded area around the campus. You have a small little water district on your campus that's producing water for the campus.
We have an aquifer, yeah.
But I kept walking around thinking, here's an opportunity, some lumber, here's another opportunity.
Yeah.
It's such a rich campus in what the environment offers that it was impressive. So I tell anyone listening, go check out Jarvis Christian University. It's a great place.
And just know we're looking for thought partners.
Yes.
We're looking for financial partners too,
sure,
but definitely thought partners who can come and see what we have and say, have you thought about this?
Right.
And that's what we're looking for.
I love it. Dr. Pruitt, thank you for joining us on the program. I am so inspired by what you're doing that when we met, I thought I cannot leave this campus and not share what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. America, keep working hard, and let's make every day a great day.
Thank you for listening to the iBuild America podcast. Please subscribe, share, and comment, and be sure to join us next time for more insights and inspiring conversations on building a powerful American workforce. iBuild America, building workforce success one podcast at a time.